Hello, you're watching Hindustan Times and I am Aditi Prasad. The Ministry of External Affairs, in a very strongly worded statement, has said that it firmly rejects the attempts of Pakistan to bring Gilgit, make about material changes in the status of Gilgit Baltistan. You remember that Pakistan had said that it wants to provisionally make Gilgit Baltistan its fifth province. The ministry has, of course, firmly rejected any such attempts and has said that any attempt on Pakistan's part to make changes to the Indian territory under its illegal and forcible occupation, including the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, including that which that includes Gilgit Baltistan, which are an integral part of India by virtue of the legal and complete and irrevocable accession of Jammu and Kashmir to the Union of India in 1947. India also called on Pakistan that instead of seeking to alter the status quo of these territories, Pakistan should immediately vacate all the areas under its illegal occupation. I'm joined today by Ahmad Ayub Mirza, a human rights
Amjad
activist.
Ayub Mirza. Amjad.
Amjad Ayub Mirza, sorry sir, my bad. Amjad Ayub Mirza, human rights activist from Gilgit Baltistan. He currently lives in exile in the UK. Strategic affairs expert SAREEN, and also in a short while joining us from Pakistan will be senior journalist SHAHEEN. Mirza Saab, let me start by you. This announcement by Imran Khan, how is it being seen by the people of Gilgit Baltistan, and what's your first response? Because now this is the first official, notification from Imran Khan himself that he's going to go ahead with this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. You see, the first thing we should realize is that since the 5th of August 2019, Pakistan has been on the back foot diplomatically and also on the home ground because it has lost all its arguments regarding its claims on Jammu Kashmir. It was an invader. It invaded on the 22nd of October 1947. Gilgit was forcefully annexed with Pakistan on the 1st of November 1947 when Major William Brown staged a coup with the officers of Gilgit Scouts, and the officers of Gilgit Scouts were all British, and on gunpoint they threatened the governor Ghansara Singh, who was appointed by Maharaja Hari Singh. They threatened Ghansara Singh that if he does not surrender, they are going to massacre all the Hindus and Sikhs in Gilgit Baltistan. So it was under duress that he surrendered, and then on the Gilgit residency, Major William Brown pulled down the state flag, and he fluttered the Pakistani flag. So that was a coup d'etat. Now, one of the significant things is that Imran Khan's choosing of time. Not only that there are elections on the 15th of November in Gilgit Baltistan, but also 1st of November is the day when Pakistan celebrates it as the so-called liberation of Gilgit Baltistan, and we celebrate it as a Black Day because we think that Gilgit Baltistan is an integral part of the state of Jammu Kashmir, and it was forcefully annexed after Pakistan started losing its war in Jammu Kashmir. Now, to announce that they are going to make Gilgit Baltistan a provisional province is, I think, a last-ditch effort by Imran Khan to influence the elections in Gilgit Baltistan, and also to give a message to its own people that they are very strong and they can do whatever they like. And they have been on the back foot again since in the parliament it was confessed by the federal minister Fawad Chaudhry that हमने भारत में घुस के मारा, and they claim responsibility for Pulwama. So it is more like a rhetoric, and even if they go ahead with it, it will be resisted not only by the people of Gilgit Baltistan but also by the people of Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir. And I think that India's statement has come very timely. They didn't wait for things to develop, and we have been very vocal about this, that Pakistan must withdraw its troops. There are, for every 25 people in Gilgit Baltistan, there is one Pakistani military personnel deployed for them, and it's always increasing. Our lands have been usurped. There's no development there. We have got 200 and more than 250 glaciers in Gilgit Baltistan. Yet there is no water, drinking water in a store. There is no drinking water in Shigar. There is so many, and there are power and electricity crisis as well. So we think that now already Pakistan has handed Gilgit Baltistan's resources to China, and we are facing kind of double colonialism. But I think that it's high time that India should get diplomatic support on the issue of Gilgit Baltistan and just claim it back. One first thing is negotiations. Then is United Nations pressure, and the third is, if they want us, then we can physically go and take our land back.
So, what is it that you feel that India can do? I mean, apart from registering its protests, and what are your expectations as the people of Gilgit Baltistan? What is it that you want, and what are your expectations so far as India is concerned?
Well, the first thing I think India should do is they should appoint some representative indigenous person from Gilgit Baltistan and make them sit in Leh, make a member of Rajya Sabha, or Lok Sabha, so that there is representation of the local people in the Indian Parliament. When we say that Gilgit Baltistan and POJK are integral part of India, then it should reflect in the political structure as well. Second thing I believe is that there should be a campaign for the release of our political prisoners who are human rights activists, environmental activists, who have been struggling for civil rights as well as protecting environment, like against Chinese mining companies, and against Pakistani Frontier Works Organization. And they have been falsely accused of murders and civil unrest and all kind of criminal charges, and sentenced to 60 years, 70 years, 90 years imprisonment, and they are languishing there for more than 10 years. So that voice should be raised, and I think someone should go to the Delhi High Court and file a petition for their release, because technically speaking, Baba Jan, Iftikhar Karbalai, Tanveer Ahmed, who pulled down the flag in Dadayal in August, are all Indian citizens. And so we should raise our voice that हमारे जो Indian citizens हैं, they are in the prison, languishing in Pakistani prisons. Why? Release them.
Let me get in Mr. SAREEN at this moment, sir. Your viewpoint on what Dr. Mirza is saying, that Gilgit Baltistan, the people of Gilgit Baltistan want to be with India. The Indian ministry, External Affairs Ministry, is also, unequivocally has said that, that Gilgit Baltistan is a part of India, that, you have to vacate the area. What is it that Imran Khan is trying to achieve by this entire gambit, and the timing? What do you make out of this?
So, Aditi, I think Mr. Mirza is right to the extent that, there is an election coming, and he is basically trying to garner some support for his party, which virtually does not exist in that region. But nevertheless, I think one is an electoral side of what he's trying to do. But, when the Prime Minister goes and promises that there is going to be what you might call a de facto annexation of an occupied portion, an illegally occupied part of another country, then it's a lot more serious, number one. Number two, the problem, however, for Imran Khan is going to be, how does he manage to do it? It is one thing to say that you're going to do some political reform, you're going to bring in some kind of political changes, which can be done through an executive order. But if you are going to get into some kind of a constitutional scheme of things, which is what giving a provisional status will amount to, because then it will have repercussions for the National Finance Commission, it will have repercussions in seats in the National Assembly, it will have to do with Senate seats and all of that, and a number of other areas in which this thing will have an impact. So you will need a constitutional amendment. Now, given the structure of the Pakistani parliament right now, I don't see how Imran Khan can manage to get even a normal legislation through, forget a constitutional amendment, especially after the opposition has already said that it is not going to support this measure because they see it as a sellout to India. And this is the irony. Because in the words of the opposition, what they say is that you are violating the UN Security Council resolutions and Pakistan's positions under that. Number one. Number two, what you are going to do is you are going to convert the LOC into a de facto border. It will, of course, not be a de jure border. Now, as far as Imran Khan is concerned, this de facto annexation does not give any legitimacy to what he is doing, because India, being the principal party in this whole issue, is not going to accept it. So in a sense, it's a matter of a status quo which continues. But let me come down to another point which Mr. Mirza has made, and I think he made a very good suggestion by saying that, we need to go beyond issuing these normal statements, even if they are strongly worded by the Ministry of External Affairs. We need to go to the next level. Now, one thing is what he suggested, that perhaps the time has come that in the Legislative Assembly of the Union Territory of Ladakh, we already used to have, in the erstwhile state, we used to have seats dedicated to the POK portions, both the Mirpur, Muzaffarabad, as well as the Gilgit Baltistan region. Now we should bifurcate those seats and we should have representation, and we could have them by nomination. As long as we don't have control over the territory, we could nominate people of the diaspora to come and sit and legislate in these areas. That could be one. Another thing which we should and we must do is that we should show our seriousness by saying that any company, country, or entity which operates in the Pakistan occupied territories will be sanctioned by India. They cannot do business in India. Any business which they do in India will be appropriated by the government under whatever law. They could be given a few chances to get out of here. But I think we need to show that level of seriousness if we actually want to agitate this issue. Otherwise, these are pro forma statements which you issue, but they don't lead you anywhere. So I think the time has come to show that level of seriousness.
So you're saying the time is there to show a level of seriousness from the Indian side too, that they're not just going to, resort to, just diplomatic, strongly worded statements, but actually move beyond that and actually take some concrete steps on the ground. Joining us now is SHAHEEN, a senior journalist from Pakistan. Ahmed, welcome to the show. Ahmed, we have with us Dr. Mirza and Sushant SAREEN. Both of we're discussing the Gilgit Baltistan issue, as you know, and the fact that he, the timing of it, for Imran Khan, is he doing this for the domestic audience largely? What are your initial thoughts? I mean, this is what both our experts on the show so far have mentioned.
Indeed, a lot of popular decisions with the people and the national narrative that has been going on since the inception of Pakistan and India. That's what Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf is mainly doing. It is in contrast to previous governments, which were also, liaising with other foreign leaders and looking at other practicalities of things. For example, the way they dealt with the French government, for example. They've taken a very, high road against the French Prime Minister, and it's unprecedented the way they have come out and criticize it. It's all populism. It's a very popular thing to do right now, to criticize France and, be really outspoken against France. However, the practical ramification is that the backdoor channels, we're coming to see that behind the scenes, French government authorities are being requested not to take action against people coming from Pakistan and France. So it's a similar situation in Gilgit Baltistan, of course, because the opposition parties have already started accusing Imran Khan and those who believe brought Imran Khan into power. They are already being accused of rigging the elections. Now, election rigging in Gilgit, the question is whether this rigging of elections in Gilgit Baltistan is the regular rigging that takes place in Pakistan, or is it some kind of a special rigging that is going to be taking place in order to? Let's not forget, Imran Khan's political party is not, the first contender to win a majority in the Gilgit Baltistan region. So there is a need for, as Pakistan's history has shown, there is a dire need for PTI, for the power, invisible powers to help them in elections. But also there is also a dire need if Imran Khan's narrative of giving rights to Gilgit Baltistan people, a provincial right, provisional provincial rights. In order to do that, he already has to establish that his party represents people from that region. And in order to do that, a special kind of rigging might be required. So far, the rigging that we've seen, because we've been covering elections, is regular kind of rigging, which also makes one wonder if this is just rhetoric and if this is just populism, because this is what the government has been doing so far.
I'd like to get Sushant Sareen's viewpoint on what you just said. That this is obviously populism from Imran Khan's side, according to Emir, and but we'll need a special kind of rigging. But before I go to Sushant, one thing that Mr. Sareen earlier pointed out was that to change the provincial status, it would they would need to make some constitutional changes, and they would need to go to the assembly and get the required permissions from the assembly and get the required approvals. Does he have enough people that he can get things done? Because the opposition, and a lot of people have been against it so far, especially the opposition. And Fazlur Rahman has spoken out against this granting of provisional status. Emma, this is for you. Sorry, I'll go to Mr. Sareen later. That within the National Assembly of Pakistan, how is Imran Khan going to go about this?
There are two sides to it. The first side is, of course, Maulana Fazlur Rahman has been the head of the committee for Kashmir as well, and he has been fighting the very narrative that now Imran Khan wants to implement. He said that very clearly that the state narrative has been completely in the direction of that this whole region is one and it belongs to Pakistan. And if you bifurcate that region for any reason, then the whole narrative that we've been fighting for decades is now going down the drain. That's one side to look at it. The other side, as you mentioned, a legislation would be required. So when it comes to state security institutions, legislation has never been an issue. Let's not forget the Chief of Army Staff wanted an extension. Chief of Army Staff usually gets extension because they're very powerful, but it was against the law. It was not within the law. So what happened? Within a very short period of time, all political parties which had been coming out very clearly and saying we're not going to allow this to happen came out and legislated in favor of the Chief of Army Staff. So if the security establishment is involved in this decision, because it is very
okay, I'm having a lot of trouble understanding what you're saying. Your audio seems a little problematic. I'm going to have to go to Mr. Sareen, and maybe you could just go out to the studio, Emma, and just join back in again, so we can get your audio right. In the meantime, I want to talk to Mr. Sareen about the China angle, and also with Dr. Mirza on the China angle to this entire ploy. Do you think that this, because of course we all know that Gilgit Baltistan is very, very important to Xi Jinping, primarily because the region connects to the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which is the flagship of China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Now, any Indian attempt to stake claim over Gilgit Baltistan would obviously not go down well with Xi Jinping. But do you think that in the at the outset, this entire maneuver of Imran Khan could be because China wants Pakistan to have more of a claim in the region so that its BRI initiative sort of is met with and done properly?
So, Aditi, let me make three very quick points. First, let me
Yeah.
just anticipate what I think Emmer was trying to say. It wasn't very clear, but I think he was expressing his skepticism about the opposition actually sticking to its guns when the security establishment leans upon it, and perhaps forcing their hands to go ahead with the legislation as and when that has to come. But why I think that situation has changed from what it was at the time of Bajwa's extension, General Bajwa's extension, to what it is now, I think the political climate has changed tremendously. Whether the security establishment will be able to push through on this legislation at this point in time, I think there's a huge question mark around it. What is going to be the quid pro quo? I'm not very sure. Plus, what does it do? And I think Emmer was alluding to that as well. What does it do to Pakistan's long-standing position on Gilgit Baltistan, or the whole issue of Jammu and Kashmir and the UN resolutions? Because this is a unilateral move by the Pakistanis, and it's not going to be acceptable to India. It's not going to be acceptable anywhere. It won't be recognized anywhere. So what it does is it undermines all the rhetoric and all the kind of politicking and the propaganda which the Pakistanis have done over the last 70 odd years. So I think there is going to be that problem. Secondly, there is going to be a problem in the Mirpur Muzaffarabad belt of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, where there is already a lot of resentment to the fact that earlier Gilgit Baltistan had been bifurcated, and now it is being forcibly annexed. And I think there is going to be protests out there. Along with it, I think separatists in Jammu and Kashmir are also going to protest about this, because they have always seen, the integrity of the erstwhile state to be inviolable. And I think what the Pakistanis are doing right now is really going to drive a wedge between them and some of the separatist groups as well. As far as China is concerned, I think, look, the fact of the matter remains that when this whole thing started about giving a provincial status to Gilgit Baltistan, it was a couple of years back, and it was under Chinese pressure that the Pakistanis started thinking about it. They even formed a committee to go into this whole issue. The Chinese were saying that, look, the legal and constitutional position of this entire territory, which is critical to the China-Pakistan economic corridor, is not clear. And if, you have to do certain things to make sure there is an element of certainty which is inserted into whatever contracts are being signed. Now, frankly, it really doesn't make any difference whether the Pakistanis do what they are doing right now in terms of constitutional changes, because they pretty much had the run of the place, and nothing stopped them from doing what they wanted to do even earlier. But the Chinese pressure had been there. So I would imagine that the Chinese pressure would still be there for them to change the status of this area, which then again doesn't work so badly for us, because the Chinese who have been pretending, and I use the word very carefully, that, it was the constitutional reforms that India did in Jammu and Kashmir, which led to this current standoff between China and India. Then, whatever the Pakistanis are doing, okay, the Chinese are hypocrites, but how do they keep quiet over such a blatant act of aggression or annexation by the Pakistanis? So clearly it undermines the Chinese rhetoric as well. As far as India is concerned, our entire opposition in some ways to the BRI initiative was that the Chinese were operating in the Gilgit Baltistan region of Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and that is not acceptable to us. The Chinese never gave two hoots about it. We also used to make these pro forma condemnations and protests, but I think now we need, like I said earlier, we need to step up. We've been making protests, but we now need to penalize the companies, and there are plenty of Chinese companies which operate out there, or their subsidiaries which operate out there, and which also do very lucrative business in India. We are already cutting the Chinese out, but I think this gives us a very good excuse to cut out the Chinese much more completely than what we have been doing so far. The Chinese will not like what we say. They can go and lump it for all we care. Frankly speaking, the times when we used to even worry about whether the Chinese will like or dislike something, I think those
Exactly.
times are fast
Far
going
gone.
by.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really need to give a damn about what Xi Jinping thinks or does not think.
Emma is back with us. Emma, let's see if your audio is correct. So, what do you think about this entire accusation that Pakistan seems to be acting in cohorts or under Chinese guidance as far as this move in Gilgit Baltistan is concerned to secure the economic corridor, the BRI?
I mean, as far as the logistics are concerned, of course, China, has invested so much in Pakistan with the guarantee that this project is going to work, and it's not going to work if all the route throughout wherever the trade route has to take place and surrounding areas are safe from attacks. But I don't think that Gilgit Baltistan has a similar situation that of Balochistan or Kashmir, where security is a prime issue. Of course, human rights breaches are happening in Gilgit Baltistan,
Right.
but security was not as big as an issue as it is in the province of Balochistan. So I think that China is actually, in my humble opinion, China is actually having to toe a friend's line rather than dictating a friend that you need to do something about Gilgit Baltistan. I think this is more to do with the fact that when India, took actions regarding Kashmir and said that it is within the UN constitutional UN framework, the Pakistan is also Prime Minister Imran Khan is also quoted saying that this is within the UN framework of what was agreed between India and Pakistan. So for India and Pakistan. However, I think what's pertinent to mention here is because we see Gilgit Baltistan, Balochistan, or Kashmir as real estate, as land, and not as people. So we seem to forget very conveniently and misinterpret UN resolution actually says. UN resolution is very clear about who will withdraw first, who will withdraw next, and it does not allow for what is happening in Kashmir or in Gilgit. That's very clear. Anybody who reads it would know that it's we're just
Yes,
being
yes, but
forced
I
by
think
the leaders.
I think, Emma, also the important thing is that in Kashmir, the revocation of Article 370, Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, that entire region was, it's been done in the region which was already a part of India. In this case, Gilgit Baltistan is a region which is forcibly occupied. So that's the difference that comes in there. So I would
I
beg
think
to
again, yeah, I
Aditi, can
think
we make a
it's
one
to do
finger
with
yes,
intervention?
perspective
yes,
as
Mr.
well, right?
Sareen,
Because
please.
the Indian perspective would be different from Pakistani perspective. You would call it Indian occupied
No,
Kashmir.
I have my own
The
perspective.
perspective.
I,
No, no,
I, I come from.
I will come to your perspective, sir. First, Mr. Sareen, and then I'll come to Dr. Mirza for the perspective
Aditi,
from India and from people of Gilgit Baltistan themselves.
Aditi, two quick points. I don't want
Yes,
to sound carping, but look, Article 370 hasn't been revoked. It's only been amended. And I think the lexicon we use to describe the constitutional reforms must be perfect. So when we keep talking about revocation, I think that's a misnomer, number one. Number two, I think where Ahmer is getting the whole thing wrong and is that there was never been any doubt that Jammu and Kashmir has been an integral part of India. Yes, there were UN resolutions that you need to have a plebiscite or whatever. Pakistan itself has never said that the occupied portions of the state of Jammu and Kashmir are an integral part of Pakistan. They were never an integral part of Pakistan. They always said that this is an outstanding issue, which is why they had never incorporated them. They never really they staked a claim politically, but in terms of constitutionalism, they never really staked a claim on these areas. So, and the moment they stake a claim on these areas and they try and absorb them, they violate the UN Security Council resolutions like nobody else can. Number one. Number two, the fact of the matter remains, and I think Emmer is quite right on that. The UN resolutions had a certain, sequence in which they had to be implemented. The
right.
first sequence, the first part of that sequence was that the entire state had to come back into Indian control. The entire state, as it was constituted in 1947, which means the entire Gilgit Baltistan region as well as the Mirpur Muzaffarabad region, and all foreign forces and all people who had come into Jammu and Kashmir had to go back. Now, there are people who have come and settled over the last 70 years. The Pakistanis have huge investments out there. You think they're ever going to go back? So clearly those UN resolutions have become redundant. They do not apply anymore. And yet India's claim, because of the accession document, stays very much intact.
Thank you, Mr. SAREEN, for that. Dr. Mirza, you wanted to come in at that point, and we want to hear from you. What is it, because you are an activist from the region, we want to hear from you. What is it that you make out of this whole situation? I mean, and this argument over India, Pakistan, which way are the people of Gilgit Baltistan going? We already made it clear it's India, but is that true for the entire region or a portion of the Gilgit? I'm talking about people, because Emma rightly pointed out, let's not look at it as a piece of land. Let's also look at it as in terms of people.
Well, you see, first of all, you can see that as Ahmed Bhai just mentioned about this situation, he gave his point of view. We got stuck into the issue of representation. Now, Ahmed's reply should come from the horse's mouth, not from someone who is like a representative of the people of POJK and Gilgit Baltistan. That is why I keep saying that in the Indian Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, or other elected bodies, there should be people from POJK who represent themselves. And I'm fed up with the UN resolutions. To be honest, at the UNHRC session, when I made my intervention, I said that all your UN resolutions are obsolete as far as we are concerned, because they have failed to solve a single issue, even move forward in solving an issue. But India did not attack our state. Pakistan attacked our state. UN resolution demanded that Pakistan withdraw all its forces and tribals. India was allowed to keep a minimum force of maybe 10,000 or so for law and order, and also to make sure that no further aggression is committed by Pakistan. And the whole land has to be handed over to India. This has not happened. And we have waited for 73 years. Now, as far as China is concerned, I think China is slowly getting fed up with the pace of development of the CPAC, because if you see, for the past 2 years there has been no development in Gwadar, no development on the roads, high roads that would connect Sindh and Gwadar with the ports, with this corridor. And the situation in Balochistan is getting worse by the day. So I think it is in this context that now China has looked towards Iran, and they are trying to develop CPAC relations. I mean, not CPAC, but One Belt, One Road relations with Iran. And they have already done an experiment from the Strait of Hormuz, Persian Gulf. They have transported a lot of Chinese goods right through Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. So they are trying to develop ports now in the Middle East and Djibouti and Sri Lanka, because they, I think, have only now one concern with Pakistan, and that is that to contain the Uyghur Muslim, East Turkestan movement in Xinjiang. And Chinese have very cleverly bought off the Pakistani religious parties. Maulana Fazlur Rahman has traveled to China, and Sirajul Haq of Jamaat Islami has traveled to China, and they have given their word there that they are not going to support Uyghur movement. They are not going to raise their voice for the 3 million Uyghur Muslims who are in concentration camps in Xinjiang. Similarly, the Chinese have done a deal with the Taliban, that the Taliban in Afghanistan will not support the Uyghurs or have their training camps in Afghanistan. So what has happened is all the training camps for Uyghur East Turkestan Islamic movement and so on and so forth have been dismantled, and they have been in, they have been sent to join other organizations, other terrorist organizations.
But do you believe China is dictating to Imran Khan because it wants to speed up that project there in the region?
China is not dictating to Imran Khan because Imran Khan is a non-entity. China is dictating to Bajwa. China is dictating to ISI. इमरान खान क्या है, एक क्रिकेटर ला के शो का पीस बिठा दिया उन्होंने, लड़कियां उसको देखती है तो तालियां भी जाती हैं, कहती है हाय हमारा रिश्ता हो जाए इससे. सो वो एक ही इज जस्ट ही इज अ शो पीस. उसको ये पता नहीं है कि मैंने कहा क्या बात करनी है. वो तो कहता है कि अंडे बेचेंगे और इकोनॉमी बना लेंगे, गाय पालेंगे और इकोनॉमी बना लेंगे. So I don't even give any attention, pay any attention to him. The actual power lies with the Pakistan military. Now Pakistan is slowly disintegrating, and inshallah one day Pakistan will be no more on the face of the earth. There will be Balochistan, Sindh. We will be free and we will be reunited with our brothers and sisters in Union Territory Ladakh and Union Territory Jammu. We have to think seriously now what steps do we have to take before 2024 election in India to secure our territories. खुदा के लिए प्लीज आप इस माइंडसेट को आप अडॉप्ट करें कि हमारा जो इलाका है भारत का वो पाकिस्तान के कब्जे में है. हम लोग होस्टेज हैं, हम लोग प्रिजनर ऑफ वॉर्स हैं.
That's quite an emphatic statement coming from you, Dr. Mirza. And on that note, I'd like to end this conversation. We've already exceeded our target of 30 minutes. Actually, we're now at almost reaching 40 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. SAREEN, Dr. Mirza, Emma. Thank you for joining us from Pakistan. Thank you, viewers, for watching this broadcast. We'll keep coming back to you with more. Keep watching In Focus with Hindustan Times.